Permission granted to land on platform 327. Welcome to another Down the Rabbit Hole video. We're talking about this, the Bespin Cloud Car from Kenner, released for The Empire Strikes Back. Apparently this is considered one of the worst vehicles that Kenner made, and I have a couple of other candidates I would throw before this. I quite like the Twin Pod Cloud Car, but let's discuss at length. So where does it get the designation as the worst vehicle? Well, there's a really good YouTube channel if you're into Star Wars collecting. One that I highly recommend is Analog Toys. The fellow there, Tony, he does a lot of good content for Star Wars collecting and Kenner and all that kind of stuff. And he did a video about the Star Wars vehicles and rated them, etc. And as part of that video, he mentioned, what's the worst vehicle? And unfortunately, the Cloud Car here won. Now, he actually had it tossed up between this one and another vehicle, which I also have. So I won't spoil what he was sort of deciding between. He voted this one as worse than it. Honestly, I have a couple of contenders that I think are worse than both of them, but let's concentrate on the Bespin Cloud Car. So I'm gonna just talk about this at length. Now, as part of my videos for Star Wars Toys, I've always mentioned that I need to market and make sure that people can't confuse this as being intended for kids. So as a result, I'm going to have me some of my Stormtrooper whiskey. I got this specifically for this purpose. It's some Talisker whiskey in a Stormtrooper whiskey bottle. I'm just going to pour myself a glass here. There we go. Now, I would normally do that on camera and set the glass somewhere in the shop, but since we're floating in the clouds above Bespin, I can't really do that here. However, let me salute as always and say, we would be honored if you would join us. And that's kind of ironic given we're headed toward Cloud City where that exact line took place. Cheers. Good stuff. Love the Stormtrooper whiskey. So, Kappa, this video is not intended for kids. Right, back to the Twin Pod Cloud Car. Now, this is a very cool vehicle. It's kind of got a strange design to it. There's not a lot in the way of features, which is maybe why Tony voted it such a bad vehicle. You've got a couple of opening up canopies. You have pilots. Talk about them in a second. And that's about it. There's also some landing gear that can retract down here. And you can set it down and land. Obviously, we're up in the sky, so we can't do that. But yeah, that's about all that the vehicle has. There's no light-up features. It doesn't take any batteries for anything. In the show, in the movie, these are the blasters here where the laser shots come out and the pilots fire off their warning to Han Solo, hey, you better head to the platform and talk to Lando because we're here to keep the peace. And I think maybe that's why this particular vehicle gets such a bad rap, is the fact that there are no batteries, no electronic sound effects, no lights, no nothing. It's just a rather plain vehicle per se. Now, so is Luke's land speeder, but admittedly that at least floats across the ground, so there's some kind of features there. I don't know. Apparently people are just not too thrilled with this particular vehicle. Now, I have a couple that I would put ahead of this one. One of which, I'll just set the Cloud Car in the sky. I've done a video already. I also have the Return of the Jedi B-Wing fighter here. It's a bit big to show in the camera. I've done a video about it. It's a very cool vehicle. I mean, it's got some great features. The rotating canopy and the extending X-foils and all that stuff. S-foils? S-foils. But it's only appears very, very briefly in Return of the Jedi, like a couple of shots, and yet an entire toy is devoted to the B-Wing. The Cloud Car here, it's got several scenes. It's got importance in the Bespin segment of Empire Strikes Back. So I think this one certainly has more cachet than the B-Wing. Secondly, and a couple of other YouTubers have talked about this, especially Retroblasting, In Kenner's lineup, they're really, except for like one very rare cardboard cutout little house diorama thing, Bespin has almost no representation in the Kenner line. Like, considering how many things happen at Bespin, there's almost nothing that takes place, or there's almost no toys devoted to Bespin for kids to play with. This is one of the few, the Bespin Cloud Car. So when I got this, I was like, yeah, here's some Bespin representation. This is awesome. I like this. Also, I really, really like the design. Now, this is a weird looking thing, but I think it looks very sort of Art Deco, you know, what's some idea of like a futuristic airplane or car or whatever the heck you would call this, an air speeder. And the way it appears in a lot of the Ralph McQuarrie artwork, it just seems to fit that, again, Art Deco is the only word I can use, that sort of futuristic yet also past sleek design, floating in the clouds. These vehicles seem to be making sense to appear in all the different sequences. In fact, I think there's another one right now. So I noticed that in the art of the Empire Strikes Back, this thing went through a few different designs before they settled on this. It was always like a two-seater, like a cab in a way. And then they started to design this idea of like two pods. Now, this is not that crazy of a design. There's actually a World War II airplane that does this. The F-82 was a long-range fighter reconnaissance. Yeah, I think it was reconnaissance. And it was designed to go for thousands of miles, I want to say. I'll put the actual number down here. But it was designed for very, very long flights. And so what they discovered was that's great as far as the fuel economy and the missions that this airplane is going to go on, but the pilot can't stay awake that long. So they actually made two pods on the airplane so that two pilots could take over after each other. I guess one of them's going to sleep during takeoff, the other one's going to fly, and then they swap shifts and off they go with the rest of the reconnaissance mission. So this whole idea, this double barrel duo design of the twin pod cloud car for Bespin is not that original / crazy. It's something that was actually used in World War II. It's also kind of beckons or harkens to like catamaran designs, you know, boats and stuff like that. So I really like this. I always thought when I saw this and when I heard the vehicle, I just thought to myself, yeah, this is cool. This is like, we don't really get to see too much of civilian life in Star Wars other than like on Tatooine, which is kind of, let's say, financially a little more hard going than maybe the people in Bespin. So this was a nice sign in 1980 of what your average Joe civilian has to live with in the Star Wars world. And these are the local constabulary trying to keep the peace and tell any of these prospective space pirates who have landed, hey, you better just listen to us, buddy. We've got blasters and we're not afraid to use them. Another shot of the whiskey. Also, one thing I really like with the Bespin Cloud Car is playing it in Battlefront. Star Wars Battlefront from 2015. They did make some Bespin levels, and they had the Cloud Car as one of the vehicles. I would jump in there and I would fly around, and it was a neat vehicle to fly. First of all, it sounds, that engine noise, just love that thing. And it was maybe a little bit of a weird vehicle to control. It would fly and accelerate in one direction very well, but then it would be hard to hit the brakes and turn. So they really put some thought into the dynamics of what it's like to fly this thing. I used to enjoy it quite a lot. I do still hop into Battlefront 2015 every once in a while and I play, and it's very, very cool to be able to experience that. And I love the Bespin Cloud Car. I really think it's a good design. Now, what's the other vehicle that I would say, other than the B-Wing, that I think would win the prize of worst vehicle? This is a bit of a cheat, maybe. Tony from Analog Toys, his other choice is more of a play set than it is a vehicle, but technically, on paper, I guess it's called a vehicle by name. So he didn't choose that, he chose this. What I would choose what I would say is actually worse than this was a play set that had a vehicle in it. In fact, technically 2 vehicles. And I didn't even ever get it. I do not have it in my collection. That is the Land of the Jawas play set. It's got a Jawa Sandcrawler as the backdrop, and it's also got an escape pod. Those are neat, I guess, but I remember as a kid thinking, why would anybody buy that? I mean, okay, the Jawa Sandcrawler is kind of neat, but it's a flimsy cardboard, I assumed. I don't have one, I don't know. Flimsy cardboard backdrop that's nowhere near the size of what it should be. And also, the escape pod is good for like one little shot if you want to do, okay, R2 and 3PO have landed. Now what do you do with the escape pod? It's really kind of pointless. And the rest of it's just molded sand plastic. Like, go out and play in a sandbox. There, you can do a heck of a lot more. I always thought the Land of the Jawas playset was a dumb, quote-unquote, vehicle. So I would put it or the B-Wing over this. The Bespin Cloud Car is really, really cool. And perhaps it's also inspiration for an upcoming design. There was an article written for Wired about flying cars. Oh, there goes another one. There was an article written for Wired about flying cars, and they showed a variety of, like, why isn't this possible, what designs are being worked on, etc. One of which, from Bert Rutan, is a twin-pod cloud car. Like, it's practically from Bespin. I wouldn't be surprised to hear the engine noise of this vehicle coming out of that air car. It's really, really cool. Like, this is so neat that what I think of as a very cool Art Deco cornerstone, iconic part of Bespin that Kenner did give us is actually inspiring people with the idea of doing air cars. So, yeah, kudos to them. So, couple of things. Now, I've been playing around with the fact that there's another Bespin Cloud Car. I'll set this guy here. Another Bespin Cloud Car flying in the background. This one here. I've actually got a die-cast twin-pod Cloud Car. Kenner did this for a little while and, released a few. No, these don't open, so I'll talk about the pilot in a second. It does have the retractable landing gear, and that's, again, like its bigger brother, that's about all it can do. You see that? See that? Yeah, you can. Okay, so you can land this thing almost identical, just a little bit smaller and very, very slightly different color scheme. But I've got the die-cast version as well. And not only that, but I do actually have a second full-size Bespin Cloud Car. This is actually from, I think, either my brother or somebody that I used to know back in the day who got me that Ewok village. I think he was throwing it out and he was like, you want this? I said, well, yeah, you got to have 2 cloud cars. That just makes sense. So I've got a second one here. And I was saying I was going to talk about the pilots. Now, this is a real, how would I describe it? Oversight from Kenner. They did finally release a pilot to sit inside. Now, it's a pretty minor part. Like, why are you casting an entire action figure for one vehicle? Because he's never seen in any other bits in Bespin. He's not walking the hallways of Cloud City. He's only ever seen flying this thing. So maybe Ken were like, well, what's the point of actually having that? But when the toy originally came out, people were like, well, who's supposed to fly this thing? The Bespin security guard? And that's what it is on the cover of the box. Even though Lando's standing in either snow or on the clouds, neither of which makes sense for the context of this particular sequence. But regardless, we won't go into that. So yeah, it was 2 years between the making of this toy and the actual pilot here, who could like turn his head and say, land on platform 327, buddy. It's worth noting, can you make that out? There's actually a control panel with all these different buttons and stuff and labels for the pilot to do. So there you go. All right. So anyway, that is the Bespin Twin Pod Cloud Car from Kenner from 1980. Apparently the worst Kenner vehicle. I don't think that's true. For me, the Jawas playset, okay, maybe that's not really a vehicle. But then the B-Wing, as cool as it is, it's kind of pointless, and it doesn't take batteries either. Like, why would this? Oh, you know what? Maybe I'll check that. Maybe it does take batteries. So, is it the fact that this thing doesn't have batteries in it? That's what's killing it for people's enjoyment? That seems kind of dumb. However, I'm going to stop there. The sun's coming out. So until next time, we'll see you down the rabbit hole. I will set our Bespin Cloud Car here, and I will wish you once more very good travels with my Stormtrooper whiskey. Cheers. As I say, I'll see you down the rabbit hole.